The corridor smelled faintly of chalk dust and cheap disinfectant, the kind that clung to every wall of Eastford High. It was Mia's first week here, her first internship as a 24-year-old literature teacher, and she had told herself over and over that she could handle anything. The truth was, she hadn't expected this. The moment she stepped into the third-floor hallway that morning, she saw them 3 boys leaning against the lockers like they owned the place. Everyone whispered about them. Ryan with his smug grin and expensive sneakers. Luke tall and bony with that twitch in his jaw. And Mason, the self-proclaimed funny guy whose jokes were always at someone else's expense. They were trouble, and trouble was watching her now. Mia kept walking, pretending not to notice her lesson plan folder clutched against her chest. She'd learned early in life that ignoring hyenas sometimes kept them from biting. But as she passed, Mason stepped forward with a laugh that was too loud. "Hey, Miss Intern," he drawled. "You always wear skirts this tight." She didn't answer. Her heels clicked steady, defiant. Then, Ryan's hand shot out quick, shameless, and grabbed her hip in a way that made her skin crawl. Before she could react, Luke leaned in his breath, hot against her ear. "Lighten up, sweetheart. We're just saying hello." It happened in less than 5 seconds, but it stretched in her mind like slow motion. The laughter, echoing off the walls, the way her stomach twisted, the humiliation burning her cheeks, and the cold, steady rage that settled behind her eyes. She spun around, but not fast enough to do what she wanted. Not yet. If she struck now, they'd see her anger, and she couldn't let them know. Not until she was ready. "You should get to class," she said evenly, her voice sharper than glass. Ryan smirked. "Maybe you should teach us a private lesson sometime." The boys burst into laughter again as she walked away, her nails digging half moons into her palm. Inside the staff room, she forced herself to breathe. She could tell the other teachers, but she already knew the answer. They're just boys being boys. Don't make trouble. You're only an intern. She'd heard it before in other places, other forms. But what they didn't know, what no one here knew, was that Mia Tran had spent 12 years training under Master Vin in Ho Chi Minh City. She'd competed at the national level in Taekwondo before choosing the classroom over the mat. She could break a board with her heel in less than a second, and she could end those boys' arrogance just as fast. She looked down at her lesson plans. She could almost hear Master Vin's voice. Patience is not weakness. Patience lets you pick the right moment. Her right moment hadn't come yet, but it would. That night, she stood in her small apartment's living room barefoot, the air filled with the sharp sounds of her kicks slicing through empty space. Her body remembered every movement. Her mind replayed every smirk, every grab, every insult. They thought she was soft. They thought she'd take it. She smiled to herself, a smile with no warmth in it. When the time came, she wouldn't just defend herself. She'd make sure they never forgot what happened when they touched her without permission. By midweek, the whispers had changed tone. Mia noticed it in the way students stared at her in the hallway, some with pity, some with poorly hidden curiosity. Word had spread. She wasn't just the pretty new intern anymore. She was the pretty new intern the bullies messed with. She kept her posture perfect, her face calm the way she'd been taught in competition. Never let your opponent read your mind. Inside, however, her pulse thudded with a slow, deliberate rhythm. She was watching, waiting, learning their patterns like studying a dangerous animal. Ryan, Luke, and Mason had grown bolder. The first incident had been physical, but now they were chipping away at her dignity in smaller, nastier ways. They'd whistle when she walked by, mutter comments just loud enough for her to hear. Luke had once dropped his pen at her feet during class and said, "Be a dear and pick that up for me." She ignored him. The students laughed. Every time they crossed the line, Mia reminded herself, not yet. She wasn't here just to survive them. She was here to end it decisively, in a way that would make everyone watching understand there were consequences. In the cafeteria, she sat with Mrs. Gallagher, a senior math teacher with 30 years' experience. "Those boys, they're not going to stop," Mrs. Gallagher murmured. "Administration's useless. They'll tell you to ignore it." Mia sipped her tea. "I don't plan to ignore it." Mrs. Gallagher glanced at her, sharply sensing something in Mia's tone, but didn't press. After school, Mia stayed late under the pretext of grading papers. She walked the empty corridors, noting where the hall cameras were, where the blind spots lay. She found the perfect spot, a stretch between the gym and the storage rooms where the lights flickered and the cameras didn't quite reach. If they want privacy to humiliate me, she thought, I'll give them privacy to regret it. That evening, she trained harder than she had in months. The wood floor of her apartment echoed with the thud of her side kicks, the snap of her turning kicks. Sweat streamed down her back, but her breathing stayed steady. She visualized their faces each time her foot struck the air, her body growing sharper, faster, more dangerous. 2 days later, her patience was tested, and again. She was walking toward the library when Mason accidentally dropped his notebook at her feet. "Oops," he said with a smirk, "clumsy me." "You gonna bend over for me, miss?" The hallway went quiet. Several students stopped to watch. Mia's eyes flicked toward the gym corridor, her chosen spot. Not today, but soon. Instead, she bent down, slowly picked up the notebook, and handed it to him with a smile so controlled it felt like steel. "You dropped this," she said. For a moment, he looked thrown off. Then Luke chuckled. "She's got sass, boys. Might have to teach her her place." They walked away laughing. Mia watched them go, her heart as calm as still water. She was almost ready. The trap would spring when they least expected it. And when it did, she wouldn't hold back. That night, she didn't just train, she rehearsed. The angle of approach. The first strike. How to control her force so she'd humiliate them without leaving permanent injury. Her body was a coiled spring, and she could feel the day coming closer with every passing hour. When the moment came, it would be in public. Loud. Unforgettable. Friday afternoon arrived heavy with the thick, restless energy of students waiting for the final bell. The sky outside was darkening, thunderclouds swelling above the school. Mia was stacking books in the library when she heard the unmistakable sound of Ryan's laugh echoing down the hall. She froze, not from fear, but from recognition, the same tone she'd heard days ago, before his hand grabbed her hip. It was mocking, confident dripping, with the certainty that nothing and no one would ever stop him. The library emptied as the last few students rushed for the weekend. Mia slipped out into the corridor. Her steps light, her senses sharpened. She didn't need to look far. Ryan, Luke, and Mason were leaning against the lockers just around the corner, blocking the way to the storage hall. The perfect spot. "Miss Intern?" Ryan called out, his voice low and suggestive. Leaving without saying goodbye, Luke grinned and stepped forward deliberately, putting himself in her path. "We've been thinking." His eyes swept over her in a way that made her skin tighten. "You should loosen up. Let us help." Mason laughed, pushing off from the lockers. "Yeah, maybe a little friendly touch before the weekend." Mia stopped exactly where she'd planned, halfway between the lockers and the gym storage hall. The flickering light overhead hummed, casting just enough shadow to make the space feel cut off from the rest of the school. "Move," she said, her voice calm, but with an edge that made Luke hesitate for half a second. Ryan smirked and stepped closer, closing the gap. Or what he challenged. His hand lifted brazen, reaching for her again. This time, she didn't step back. In a blink, Ryan's wrist was trapped in her grip, twisted just enough to make him flinch. He barely had time to register the pain before her right leg shot up a lightning-fast front kick, stopping a hair's breadth from his chest. She released him and stepped back, letting the sudden shift in control hang in the air like a warning. But they didn't take it as a warning. Luke lunged forward, grabbing her arm, and that was the final trigger. Mia pivoted on her heel, her body moving with the precision of muscle memory, and slammed a side kick into his midsection. The sound of air rushing out of his lungs was almost drowned by the echo of his body hitting the lockers. Mason's eyes widened, but instead of backing off, he swung at her with an awkward punch. She sidestepped, effortlessly hooked his ankle with her foot, and swept him to the ground. He hit the floor with a grunt, more shocked than hurt. Ryan cursed and came at her, but this time, she didn't give him the chance. Her spinning roundhouse caught him clean on the side of the face, the impact snapping his head sideways and sending him stumbling into the wall. The corridor went silent, except for the hum of the failing light. Mia stood in the center, breathing steady, her stance loose but ready. None of them dared move. She glanced at each of them in turn. "Touch me again," she said softly, "and you won't get up next time." Then she walked away, leaving them hunched, wheezing, and staring after her in stunned disbelief. But she knew this wasn't over. Not yet, because tomorrow the whole school would know. And that was exactly what she wanted. By Monday morning, the air in Eastford High felt different. Whispers trailed Mia like a shadow the moment she stepped through the doors. Heads turned, students elbowed each other, and a ripple of excitement moved through the hallway like gossip carried on the wind. They'd heard. The story had grown in the retelling. Some said she'd knocked Ryan out cold with one kick. Others claimed Luke had been sent to the nurse's office with cracked ribs. Mia didn't bother correcting any of it. Truth or exaggeration, the message was the same. The intern teacher was not someone to mess with. But Ryan, Luke, and Mason weren't the kind to take humiliation quietly. She spotted them by the vending machines between classes, huddled together, their faces tight with suppressed anger. The bruising on Ryan's cheek was faint but visible, and Luke's hand still rubbed at his ribs. She caught Ryan's eyes for a brief second. His grin was gone, replaced by something colder. It didn't take long for them to make their move. After her third period class, Mia was walking toward the main staircase when she heard the footsteps behind her, fast, heavy. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. "Think you're a big deal now," Mason's voice barked. "Let's see how you handle this." They were trying to corner her again, but this time they hadn't counted on the audience. A group of sophomores lingered nearby, their phones half raised, sensing something was about to happen. The tension crackled. Ryan stepped forward. "We're not afraid of some karate Barbie," he sneered. "Good," Mia said, her voice steady. "It'll make this easier." Luke lunged first, his arm swinging out in a clumsy attempt to grab her. She sidestepped, caught his wrist, and twisted the same move as before. But this time, she used his own momentum to send him sprawling to the floor. Gasps erupted from the onlookers. Ryan charged next, faster than she'd expected. But she pivoted smoothly, driving her heel into his thigh with enough force to drop him to one knee. Mason hesitated just long enough for her to sweep his legs and send him crashing down beside Luke. The crowd erupted their cheers, bouncing off the tiled walls. Phones were up now, recording every second. Mia could see it in the bullies' faces, the dawning realization that this wasn't just a fight they'd lost. This was a humiliation they couldn't erase. She stood over them, her breathing calm, her gaze sharp. "You think strength is about size? About who can scare who?" She said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Strength is knowing when to stop. You three don't know how, so I'll stop you." No one moved. Even the usual hallway chatter had died. She stepped back, giving them space to scramble to their feet. They didn't speak, didn't try again, not with a dozen cameras capturing every bruise, every tremor in their hands. They walked away stiffly, their faces burning under the weight of so many eyes. Mia didn't smile. She didn't need to. The video would do the rest. By the end of the day, the whole school, maybe the whole town would see that if you touched her without permission, you'd regret it in front of everyone. And this time, she knew it was over. By Tuesday morning, the videos had gone viral within the school's private group chats. Clips of Ryan limping away, Luke groaning on the floor, and Mason scrambling backward as Mia stood over them were looped, replayed, and shared with captions like "Queen Energy" and "Don't mess with Miss Tran." Teachers had seen it too. In the staff room, there was an unspoken mix of amusement and disbelief. Some avoided commenting, others offered quiet nods of approval. Mrs. Gallagher passed her a cup of tea with a subtle smile. "Guess you handled it your way," she murmured. The principal called her in that afternoon. Mr. Harper, a tall man with thinning hair, leaned back in his chair with a look of forced neutrality. "Mia, there have been reports. Physical altercations involving students." "Yes," she said calmly, meeting his eyes. "They put their hands on me twice. I defended myself. It's all on video." He sighed, drumming his fingers on the desk. "The parents are furious, but frankly..." His lips twitched into the smallest of smiles. "Frankly, those boys have been a problem for years. You may have done us a favor." That was the closest she'd get to praise. It was enough. When she left his office, she saw the bullies by the lockers. They didn't look at her. Their shoulders were tight, their heads low, the posture of predators forced into prey. The bruises were still faint on their faces, but the real damage was in their pride. The punishment came swiftly. 3 weeks suspension for all three with behavioral review on their records. Rumor had it their parents were livid, but also too embarrassed to push back publicly after all the footage showed exactly what had happened. In the following days, the atmosphere shifted completely. Students who had once giggled behind their hands when she walked by now greeted her with respect, some with awe. The shy ones lingered after class to ask about her past, curious about her martial arts training. Even the troublemakers gave her a wide berth. On Friday, as she packed her bag to leave, a first-year girl hesitated at the door. "Miss Tran," she said softly. "Thank you." Mia smiled, but there was no smugness in it. For what? For showing them they can't just do that to people. To anyone. The girl's voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. After the student left, Mia stood alone in the quiet classroom, the late afternoon sun spilling across the desks. The week had been exhausting, but the result was undeniable, not just for her, but for everyone who'd been silently enduring the same kind of treatment. She hadn't just won a fight. She'd drawn a line no one dared cross anymore. As she walked out into the fading light, she felt the echo of Master Vin's words again. Patience is not weakness. Patience lets you choose the moment that changes everything. Her moment had come, and she'd made sure it was one they would never forget. Mia's experience was a harsh reminder that standing up for yourself is rarely easy, but it is always necessary. She could have reported the harassment, and perhaps nothing would have changed. Instead, she waited, observed, and chose her moment to act in a way that left no room for doubt or denial. It wasn't about violence for its own sake. It was about reclaiming her dignity and sending a message to anyone who thought they could take it. The lesson is clear. Strength is not in the loudest voice or the biggest threat, but in the resolve to defend your boundaries when they are crossed. Sometimes, patience is the sharpest weapon, allowing you to strike only when it will matter most. And when that moment comes, you must meet it without fear, because the respect you earn will outlast the fear you felt.